Welcome. You're listening to the Good Girls Don't podcast with Ashley Ray
and Verity Mansfield.
This is the podcast where we smash those rules that we've been taught to follow both as men and women and burn the damn rule book. We're tackling the big issues and the issues nobody wants to talk about, and we'll be fiercely feminist about it.
This podcast is about inspiration, education, compassion, and being the change that you need to see in this world. This podcast is for the trailblazers, the freedom fighters, and the soul igniters, and all the women just like you who are ready to break the good girl rules and be heard.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of Australia and its First Nations people on which this podcast is produced and consumed. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.
Get ready for the revolution. It's coming to you now. It's coming to you now. We're gonna sing an evolution. And they'll never bring us down. No, they'll never bring us down.
Verity, are you ready for another episode?
Ashley. Oh, I am so ready for this episode. It's just absolutely beautiful and really had such a massive impact on me throughout the recording and even afterwards.
I know, you're actually kind of glowing a bit from this one. I always find whenever I talk to our guest today that it really does feel like my soul's just been exfoliated and it's all bright and shiny and new again. I suppose we should tell people who we're talking about, by the way.
We should. We've just had an amazing conversation with Sarah Taylor. Now, if you don't know who Sarah Taylor is, she's also been referred to as that bus lady. And I came across Sarah a few years ago as she was posting on Facebook about getting off the grid, and she was building and renovating this old bus to live on. And I was absolutely fascinated, especially as a single mother of two girls who was very focused on creating stability. Absolutely magically enchanted by this woman on the other side of Australia who was getting off the grid, who seemed to me to be this beautiful, free-spirited human that was building a bus to go live on.
I know. I remember finding her
so
around the same time, and she absolutely fascinated me as well. I mean, she frightened me a lot because she challenged a lot of what I had been taught, a lot of the conditioning, a lot of the rules that had been like ingrained in me, and what she was doing really challenged that and took quite a long time to unravel. But holy crap, it was so good to get her on this episode. I think we should tell you guys probably a little bit more about Sarah so you get a fuller picture of what we're talking about before we get into it. As well as you may have been hearing who she is, called the Bus Lady, and having her own tiny little homestead, she's also an intentional business coach. So Sarah helps women unhook from mainstream marketing so they can sell their services or products without compromising their values, which, hooray, I'm all for that. She's also a digital privacy advocate, environmental activist, permaculture student, and just casually in her spare time, she likes to find ways that she can help dismantle systemic economic slavery, because that's a hobby that we all have. Sarah says that her main goal for her business is to help others create regenerative practices and abundance business models so that people can earn money sustainably and for the benefit of the planet, not its destruction, which I'm guessing for our lovely listeners, this just is music to your ears and is uplifting of your heart. It certainly makes me feel awesome.
It's so important, isn't it? As business women, how do we create businesses that are sustainable, that are self-sufficient, that are ethical, and allow for us to not only stick to our deepest values, but enable us to help to ensure that no one gets left behind in terms of accessibility. And we talked about that quite a lot in depth, about making not that it's services that are monetarily accessible across the whole board, but how do we still create amazing sales for ourselves and yet still leave no one behind to make sure that they are accessible to those who are less fortunate than ourselves? Talking about, like you said, unhooking from the mainstream marketing noise. What is the mainstream marketing noise, and how most of the time we don't even know that we're in it, that we're submerged in it? Being able to give back, and not when we've reached or when we've made it, but right here and right now, and how we can give back at any point in our journey without sacrificing anything.
Yeah, really building that into the foundations of what we do.
Of our business from scratch, being the architect of our life, the power that comes with that, embracing the trust and the power within ourselves to live life on our own terms. And she had this really beautiful thing that we talked about. You've got to listen to the episode, but why we should stop trying to park the bus. And
That's
that
a
was
big
such
one.
a beautiful conversation. Sarah often gets asked, she said it's the most asked question, where do you park the bus? So it was a really gorgeous and quite funny conversation to have had. We also talked about, the torture of not fitting in, of hitting rock bottom, and, finding the way back out. And being able to turn that feeling of not fitting in, into the one thing that actually does turn our life around. And if you have such reverence for Sarah, so please, if anyone has ever hit rock bottom, has ever thought how the hell they're ever going to, get out of the mess they're in, the relationship they're in, the debt they're in, whatever position it is, this episode is just so beautiful. It really, really is. And I think one of my favorite quotes that Sarah gave us on this podcast was, it really is our job to make sure that humanity thrives and survives. And it just really shows, I think, the depth of the beauty within Sarah's soul, and, her purpose for creating everything that she's.
I know, it just was, I literally feel like we've just wrapped up that interview and I just feel all sparkly, and it's just, I don't have any other words for it other than to say that it was absolutely beautiful. And Sarah's journey has been incredible to watch for several years now. I remember coming across her and just watching her lives and seeing her photos with her, trying to mess around and figure out how to use these power tools to convert her bus, and seeing how far she's come is incredible, and the wisdom she now has to offer as a result of the journey she's been on. It's incredible. It's such a beautiful episode.
And it's so inspiring. I mean, how do you build a bus with zero knowledge, no power tools, only ever having used a screwdriver, and without even knowing how to drive? It is a brilliant episode. It is so uplifting. It is so inspiring. And Ashley and I both know that you're going to absolutely love this.
So please stick around, listen for the new episode, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Good Girls Don't. Sarah, welcome to the Good Girls Don't podcast. Now, before we go any further, people may not know you as Sarah. They might know you as the bus lady.
Yes.
Can you please tell us why you are the bus lady and what that's all about?
Yes. So I bought a 1968 Bedford bus and converted it, or almost finished converting it, into my tiny house. And I had a Facebook group called Life Off Grid where I documented that journey. And I was just sort of affectionately known as the bus lady. So I would turn up to places and people would be like, "Oh my God, it's you, you're the bus lady." And it just became this really cute thing. So I think it was affectionately known as, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah.
But
So
I remember seeing you. But I remember seeing you on Facebook. I wasn't part of that Facebook group, but I remember seeing your photos coming up in other Facebook groups and was fascinated. I just thought you were like the coolest person ever.
Of course you did.
I think, especially because, I kind of
Verity loves a good power tool.
I love a good power tool. I get so excited. But then it was also the thing of as being a single mum and having 2 children and feeling like I, need to create that stability for them. And then here on the other side of this country was this incredible woman who was this free spirited kind of feel. And she was building a bus and she was going to go off the grid. And I was like, It's
Oh my
like
God,
this, you know,
that's so
dream
funny to hear.
fantasy person. I was like, oh my God, she's incredible.
Well, it's so funny you say that, because one of the things I say about the bus is that ironically I bought wheels and got roots. Like it just gave me all of my purpose, all of my grounding, all of my, like it was such a spiritual journey for me, that project. It still is. She is one of the loves of my life. It came at the beginning of a very dark time in my life. It was like 4 years of just absolute hell, where I had a back injury, job losses, you know, left a significant relationship, was just medicated and self-medicating and just really in a bad spot. And one night I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like I've so had enough, and kind of looked at all the tablets I had and thought I could just go to sleep and not wake up. Like that's an option.
Yeah.
And my dog needed a wee. So I literally got up from the dining table, which I still have. I kept it for the bus. And
The
I
dog
went
or
to
the dining room table?
both the dining room table. Because I was just sobbing and I couldn't pay next month's rent. I was just in absolute agony. And I opened the back door and Bus Home came into my consciousness. And like, it just changed my life. I packed up all the pills back into the bottles and wrote a to-do list of 5 things. And like 9 months later, the bus was on my driveway.
That's incredible.
Yeah. One of those things was learn to drive. I hadn't learned to drive at 35.
You hadn't learnt to drive. That's
No.
incredible. How much knowledge did you, I've always wanted to ask you this, how much knowledge did you actually have in
Zero.
knowing how to renovate a bus?
0. None. I'd never even used, oh, that's a lie. I'd used a screwdriver to change a plug.
That's more than
it.
me, to be honest.
I didn't know how to drive. I didn't have a driveway. I lived in a house share that I wasn't going to be able to pay my rent with next month. And it was one of those extreme downloads from the universe where you just like, there is no choice. It was the solution to everything. And I didn't need to know the how. It was like, I'm buying a bus. So I wrote a to-do list, which was get any job, move to a house with a big enough driveway, learn to drive a bus, buy and convert a bus. That's literally what I did. And so 2 weeks later, I got a job. 2 months later, I moved house to one with a big enough driveway, and I took a measuring tape to all of the house viewings. And if the driveway wasn't long enough or wide enough, I didn't look inside.
Love it.
And then I sat my test 3 months after that. And then 6 months after that, the bus was on my driveway. And then I freaked out for about 6 weeks.
I would too. I'd be like, far out. I just made some huge changes. I rented a house based on the driveway.
Yes. Yeah. That's how it began. And it was just this real, like, save your own life moment. It was like, you're so dreadfully unhappy. You need to figure out why, and you need to go and find some purpose. And so that's why I named my bus Purpose. I call her Mrs. P for short. And she has literally just become my vehicle, figuratively and in reality, kind of for my life and my purpose and
the
helping others.
metaphor is so powerful.
Yeah. And people, I think that's what really draws people into the bus's story and my story. And there were so many layers upon layers. Like, she's from 1968, at a time where women couldn't even have their own bank accounts or credit cards, or would never have been able to do what I'm doing. And I just kind of, it was this big drive to help people remember what they're capable of. So yeah, I literally had zero skills, nothing. I didn't own any tools. I relied on the generosity and grace of friends and colleagues, and 2 years later, my husband, to help me YouTube. I just knew it was my way out of the situation I was in.
That's absolutely incredible. Just mind-blowingly incredible.
I've got to ask lots of questions, because some people might be listening and thinking, a bus solves Sarah's problems. I wonder.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
But there's so many questions I have about the answer to your life, which is the bus. And that is, okay, you've touched on the fact that you were in a really crappy place in life when that idea hit you. Yeah. What I am really curious about is, what level of awareness did you have around your situation? Like, was it, I know you were aware that you were hurting and in pain and things were bad, but I'm curious as to, like, was everything so immediate that you couldn't look up and look at the bigger picture, or were you conscious of the bigger picture issues that were playing out in your life? Or
No, not at that time. So the bus was literally the beginning of my spiritual journey, of my back injury, really. That was the first time that I was like, oh, something's wrong. Like, you're not happy. The universe has been talking to you and you've been ignoring it. And now you can't put your own socks on or weave out yourself. Like, you need to look at your life, Sarah. And so that was the beginning. And I had sort of been reading and meditating and, doing kind of spiritually things. The night of the bus sort of awakening was really the beginning of, like, you actually get to choose your life. You're the architect. You can build it whatever way you want. So what do you want? And it was then that I started getting more and more aware of, I've never liked my career in admin. Moving from temp job to temp job just to kind of keep things different doesn't work anymore. I've kind of exhausted that over the last decade. What do I want to do? How do I want to help? I really desperately wanted to feel like I was doing meaningful work in some way. And the traditional, conventional stuff just didn't fit me. And for a long time, my awareness was just, you don't fit, you're weird. Everyone else fits and they're not weird. And so I had to kind of navigate my way through that. And I became obsessed. I literally became obsessed with how people found their happiness, how they found their purpose, how they knew what they wanted to do. Like, there was this group that just like were birthed and were like, I'm going to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. And they just knew and went and did it and they were happy.
I never understood those people, to be honest.
I have lots of friends who are those people who are like engineers because they've just always done, that's what they wanted to do.
I'm listening to Sarah and I'm kind of like, I feel like she's the voice in my head.
I get that a lot.
That's me.
But, and I knew there's this other group of people that they'd found happiness. And I thought, ooh, okay, I want to talk to them and I want to figure out the formula that they used.
What do they know that I don't know?
Yeah.
What's the
I
secret?
became obsessed. Yeah. Like, I remember interviewing, I was on a reception in a temp role and I interviewed the guy who came and brought the mail every day because he looked so freaking happy. And I was like, what do you do? Like, how did you end up doing this? Oh, I love driving trucks. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And what I discovered was that it's the doing that gives you momentum, that gives you more questions to answer, that by picking up one tool you'll learn how to use 5. Like, there's no barriers other than the ones I was putting in my place. And so it was really just about saying, okay, I don't know what I want, but I know I don't want this. So that's a shift away. Like, you don't have to find the answer. It's almost like I was standing in front of a brick wall, and I couldn't see a window. But you don't have to see the window. You just have to turn your head slightly away from the wall to start with.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? Like, that's
Yes.
the first step. There's like all these tiny little steps. It's like the number one question I get asked about the bus. Where are you going to park it? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that's your question? And over and over and over again, this question across countries. I've done talks in America, in Australia, all over the place. And that is the number one question. And what I realized it was code for fear. It was code for, like, I need all the answers first and then once I get here, then I'll be happy. And it's like, girl, I have to learn to drive it first.
But it's almost, it is a really interesting question. Where am I going to park it? Because it's that kind of thing. Like, if you saw, Miss Purpose, Miss P as this, as your entire being, all of you, and it's this big, amazing, big, beautiful bus. And if we all were to step into our big, amazing self, like, we have this fear of being too much. And it's like, who's going to accept all of this? Where would I put all of this? How would all of this fit into this body or my role or what society tells me to be, which, as we all know, especially because I talk so much about breaking the good girl rules, the good girl is very small and she's told who she is, and she, doesn't rock the boat, and she doesn't upset people, and she's not too big, she's not too loud, and so I think it's a really, really powerful question that they're asking on a metaphorical level, because it's like, almost like saying, what right do I have to own all of me the way that you do? Like, where, if I stepped up, where would I fit in?
And it's such a beautiful you can read an audience, so depending on where I was in the world or who I was talking to or the situation, I had a few answers. It was like, I'd be funny and flippant and just be like, well, got to learn to drive it first, love, like just kind of throw it away. And then there were some people who I knew it was a deeper meaning for them. It was very clear when it was like, I don't know, like for me, it says the how is waiting for you to show up. The how is always waiting for you to show up. So don't wait for the how. Like show up and it will arrive. Like that's, and it's become this very funny saying in our household, in our family now. Whenever I'm stuck on something, my husband will just be like, oh, you're trying to park the bus. Stop trying to park the bus. And it's like, stop trying to solve problems you don't have yet. Like what's the next step?
I love that because we've all done that. We've all had that moment where we skip 300 steps ahead and think about that problem, and it's like you're not going to solve that problem with where you're at now.
Yeah,
like you change into that person. Well, not change, but you evolve. You evolve to that level of thinking that gives you the solution.
Yeah.
And there's that beautiful concept with it too, where the idea of like if you park the bus, then you lose momentum. So then why are you like stop trying to park the bus? Like stop trying to stop yourself from losing that momentum. Like why the fuck
it's almost like
anyway.
I face people's dreams or what ifs or like possibility. That's what's coming at me when they ask that question. It's like so I internalized a lot of the you don't fit, what's wrong with you, why are you weird, why does everyone else seem happy in their lives and you're not, why can't you just be happy with an admin job, like why do you need more, what all of that stuff I internalized. And with the bus I think I just broke all the rules, and it was this really huge powerful, like I'm the bus lady, man. I can do anything. I'm going to go to space. I'm going to do whatever I want. Like everything. Once I realized I lost my fear and I could genuinely believe I can do anything. Genuinely can believe I can do anything. And every day that was shown to me, even when before the bus was on my driveway. Like I would just find things, and before I could drive and before I had a car, the things that I needed would just arrive in my street or within a 2-block radius of my house, and I would drag them home. And people were like, you're nuts. Why do you have a kitchen sink already? You don't even have the bus yet. And I would say, well, I can't be in charge of the timing. Like I'm open to receiving.
I love that.
Things are arriving. And then when I learned to drive and I got a car, things I could then go in further afield, and I would go and pick things up or swap things, or, so everything was reclaimed, everything was recycled or upcycled or reused or repurposed. And it was just this beautiful exchange with every single piece of it. Like every single thing on my bus has been a conversation or a laughter or a great afternoon. Like everything has a story, literally. And so that's turned into like, how do I monetize that? How do I show people that? How do I build meaningful work from what I'm doing? And that began my journey into business, basically, and out of admin.
So then how did you make that transition then? And how did the bus become or fall into that story from moving from getting out of this kind of numbing, rat racy admin job that was not soul-feeding or had any purpose for your soul or any direction, to then, having a business that's, thriving and that you're passionate about and that's actually feeding your soul? Like,
quietly changing the world.
Yeah, and how did the bus fit into that story?
It is the foundational piece of it. It's not separate from me. Like it's such a weird, like I'm going to try not to cry when I talk about it, but people get, it's like my dog is part of my heart. Like it's just,
but this is your story. You should be emotional about
it.
Like,
yeah. I mean, so I do. She's, my husband and I joke, it's like my dog, Mrs. P, husband. Like that's the order in which they came and the order in which I love them. No, just kidding. But she gave me something that I just couldn't have gotten without that process. And the actual like logistical process of going, I hate my job to I want to work on my own and doing it was like a 2-year-ish, at sometimes genuinely a bloodied street fight with myself that I just, from frustration to adrenal fatigue to just feeling like I didn't fit, having to take time off. it started with moving from a soul-sucking 9 to 5 to a slightly less soul-sucking 9 to 3. Then from 9 to 3, 5 days a week, to 9 to 3, 3 days a week. I made a lot of sacrifices financially, and just made difficult decisions that a lot of people, again, I am privileged to be able to do. I didn't have children. I didn't know, no one else was relying on me. So I did a month-long spending freeze. And what that did was showed me what I needed to survive versus what I was spending, which was my entire take-home pay. And what I learned was that my rent and my bills and my food was about 50% of my take-home pay. And so all I really needed to do in the first instance was replace that. So build a buffer of 3 months of that, which I did. And then I quit my day job and found admin work online. I just stuck a V in front of my A that I'd been doing for 20 years. I'd been sort of building relationships in Facebook groups. So I reached out and people were like, yeah, I've got a couple of hours here a week and I've got a couple of hours here and da-da-da. And that just grew and grew and grew into social media management, social media content creation, coaching. Meanwhile, all the while trying to figure out, like, knowing those pieces weren't quite right, but using the skills that I had at the time to be able to hang out with my dog every day and to just sit in my pajamas if I wanted to and build my bus without having to commute home to do it first. And all of those benefits outweighed, being able to eat out or see friends as often or whatever. Because I knew in 2 or 3 years' time, I'd be debt-free, mortgage-free, living on my bus. And so then I could do anything, then I could travel, then I could eat out, then I could figure out my purpose.
Yeah, this is really fascinating. I think I was listening to this other thing this morning, and this lady was talking about, how she created small bundles of money then to create a bigger monetary goal. And she was saying that, each day, instead of buying, more makeup or another pair of shoes or a coffee, she was literally like, okay, like if I could buy myself a $5 coffee, but was that a good investment? Like, what was the value that she was going to get back on that long term?
Yeah.
And it was this really cool way of looking at things and saying, well, is that a good investment long term for me? And she was like, no, a new pair of shoes is not a good investment long term. No, buying a new eyeshadow palette was not a great investment long term. Because she knew what her long term goal was for the year, and she was like, that's not going to help me get there.
Definitely.
Coffee's not going to help me get there.
And I had
she would make conscious decisions every single day on small amounts of money that she was spending.
Yeah. I have a story that I tell, or used to tell quite regularly. I tell it on stage as well. It's called the Biscuit and the Bus story. And so during my month-long spending freeze, I was also doing dry July. Then I decided halfway through to give up sugar. Never do those 3 things. Never do those 3 things all together. Lesson learned. Tick. But I had learned to drive. My friend had lent me her car because I was nervous about driving. It had been a year since my test and I hadn't been back in a car. So she said, look, just take my car for a couple of months, get used to driving. So there I was in my pajamas, sugar craving at like 9 o'clock at night. And I drove all the way to Woolies, my Uggs and my pajamas. And I'm standing in front of the biscuit aisle going, Sarah Jane Stephen. Like, do you want this packet of biscuits or do you want your bus conversion, lady? And I got back in the car. I must have looked like a crazy person in this biscuit aisle, and I was just having one of those like talks to myself at the time, like my maiden name. But Sarah Jane Stephen, like, what are you doing? Like, because $2 turns into $5, turns into $20, turns into a night out, turns into, and I didn't have the money. It was like my disposable income was $900 a month, and that was me living like meal planning, like living zero anything other than rent, utilities, getting to and from work and feeding myself. That was it. So I could put that $900 towards my bus conversion so that in 2 years' time I had somewhere to live that no one could ever kick me out of, that I couldn't be evicted from, that if I didn't have a job and couldn't afford rent, that was the question always with every single purchase, everything. $2 is a centimeter of rubber for my windows. $2 is a box of screws from Bunnings. $2, it was that specific. And it was just a decision. That's so
cool.
Yeah.
Can we talk a bit more about this idea? Because this really, the first time I ever spoke to you and we talked about the idea of having somewhere to live that you're never going to be kicked out of or evicted from. Because that's huge for so many people. That's what we all aspire to. Like, I feel We hear the message in the media a lot that the only way to do that is to get a mortgage.
Yeah, which is not only not true, but it was impossible for me at 36 with no savings, living paycheck to paycheck on a low income. Like I say, at a very big push, $900 a month. It would take me till I was in my 50s to even save up a deposit, which I would have then been, priced out of. And yeah, and so like living on a bus isn't the answer for everyone. Living tiny isn't the answer for everyone, especially when mindset is, oh, I need all the land and I need a big chunk of money to buy land first and da 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 da. Like I worried about those things later. It was like, how can I get to a place where, if my back injury flared up and I lost my job again, I'd lost 2 jobs through it, that I wouldn't be evicted. I'd been evicted once before and was facing eviction when the bus idea happened. I was on a work cover claim that stopped because they said I was fit for work, and so the payments just stopped, and I went to Centrelink and wasn't ready for full-time work, like haven't really ever been able to since. And I got home and I cried because I realized that what they were going to give me every week wouldn't even cover my rent. And so, I'm grateful every day that I didn't have small humans that I had to raise at the same time, like many women do, that I wasn't in a domestic violence situation like many women are. And all of those things were to my benefit, but I still couldn't afford to pay my rent, literally couldn't afford to pay my rent. And I was I just was terrified. It is the most frightening experience of my whole life.
It really is, because it threatens your whole security. It's like, well, if I can't have this roof over my head, then how do I do anything? And there's a lot of shame around that too, because people just,
oh my God,
I feel that there's an assumption that you can just do that. You can just magically afford rent and a mortgage.
Yeah.
You can just afford your bills and food.
Yeah. I mean, and I was working in corporate, in admin eventually, and I was still struggling when I was living alone, because no one was there to help with the bills, no one was there to help with rent and all that stuff. And again, it was one of those very thought about processes. When I made that to-do list, it was very like, okay, what's the biggest place that you can afford by yourself? Because if you have a spare room, then you can collect things to sell, or you can swap, rent for help with the bus, or like I was very conscious about what I was doing. And I stretched myself to the absolute max, but I knew it would be worth it, because in a couple of years I would have this thing that was mine. And no matter what my situation financially, my dog and I would always have a roof over our heads. But yeah, I've been at the mercy of jobs just no longer being there anymore, or rent, landlords, all that sort of stuff. So it was for my own security, really, and I had to do that. I had to do that for myself.
I find
it's such
it
an incredible story.
Yeah,
it's going to be a movie. I can feel it.
I love it. It just, every time I hear you speak about this, it just fills my soul so much to hear this story.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I really, I don't wish the physical or emotional pain that I and many experience on others. I wish for people don't have to get to bottom in order to go for their dreams. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, I'm grateful for my back injury every day of the week. Like it taught me boundaries. It's the flag of what's going on in my world externally. It's, and the bus is just, I feel like I'm its caretaker, and the story will be passed on and passed on and passed on, and hopefully will inspire other people. And that legacy will be on long before I'm, long after I'm gone, hopefully. But it kind of grew and grew and grew. It wasn't that, like, it literally started out as like, I can't afford my rent next month. Like, I'm the most terrified I've ever been. It's like, let's just go to sleep and not wake up, or what? Like, that's the situation. And so, now I just think anything's possible. And all I had to do was look out my window. Like, I used to sit on the driveway before it arrived and measure out 10 meters by 2.5 meters and just sit in it, like with boxes and stuff. And I just became obsessed with what the space would be and look like. And, and then every day when it was on my driveway, I would open the curtain and just be like, oh, I can do anything. I can do anything.
She is. It's already happening.
That's so cool. And I think it's
Yeah.
that thing, isn't it? It's having that goal and being really specific and clear about something, and having and even cultivating the passion for it and the
Yeah.
focus on it. And when we can
Yeah.
focus on something that fills us up, we move away from like depression and from hopelessness and from despair.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as much as we wish that no one is in that position, so many thousands and millions of people are. And I've
Yeah.
done many interviews with I was working on a project for single mothers and interviewing so many, like 50, 60 single mothers, and they pretty much all had been in that position of
Mhm.
wanting to walk out of their lives
Yeah.
completely, but they couldn't do it because of their children. Like their
Yeah.
children was the only thing keeping them connected to this earth.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart. There are so many people out there that hit that rock bottom,
Yeah.
and not just once, but numerous times. And
Yeah.
they do find the courage, that one thing that keeps them going.
And the thing is, the system isn't set up to support women, single mothers, women in general. Like, it's our system. Like my last landlord bought that property 25 years earlier for $86,000, and it was now worth about $860,000.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even afford the $86,000 for the deposit for what it would be worth.
Yeah.
There's so many things systemically that don't support what we casually think of as what we, what's normal. Like, you should be able to afford to rent a house. You should be able to afford your life. Like, we're not talking extravagance here. We're talking paying your rent, maybe going on a holiday or eating out once a week. Like, those are things that we would consider in our Western world quite normal. But 70% of us are living paycheck to paycheck and in massive debt. I mean, that was one thing I was grateful for. I never had a credit card. I never had a loan. I don't, but there are people's experiences that force them into that situation and then hold them there.
Mm.
Yeah, it makes
And
it
so they're really
extraordinarily hard for
ahead.
people to try and claw their way out of it.
Yeah. And that's why accessibility to whatever I do now, whether it's driving Mrs. P around Australia for people to come and have a look and talk to me about it, whether it's doing speaking gigs, whether it's my coaching, whatever course I create in the future, all of that stuff needs to have an accessibility process built into the launch and how I run my business. I mean, that's just, that's a non-negotiable for me. Because I feel like my position has been very, very privileged indeed.
I want to ask you a bit more about this as well. So you, we've been chatting a little bit about how do we make businesses and whatever endeavors that we find more accessible, particularly when, we've had an off-air talk about this before, where we feel like we are the exact ideal client for someone, but there's a certain rhetoric that says that if someone can't afford it, then they're absolutely not your client. Yeah.
And worse still, I wrote about this the other week on my blog. I heard a business coach tell her audience, don't try and fix broke people's problems. And it was interesting to view and witness my own response to that. The fight and flight response I got, the anger, I was just livid, my blood boiled, and then I calmed down and sort of picked at what she really meant and sort of processed all of that as well. But ultimately, I believe that it is our job to make sure humanity survives and thrives. And that's all of us, There's a saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. And it's very, very true, but it assumes that everyone has access to a boat to begin with. And it's the accessibility for me. And there are many, many models. There's lots of free stuff you can literally just give. There are freer versions of your stuff that you can give out. So for one example, the permaculture course that I'm doing, there's a paid version that's certified with all of the whistles and bells and everything else. And it's 72 hours delivery. And then there's a year-long weekly email that you get on the free course that's sort of less bells and whistles. There's no certification, but the content is the same. And that's just given for free or by donation. And then there's these models of when you look at how you physically plant food and harvest food, is to plant 4 for every 1 you want to take. So you're putting what you need to into the soil, you're taking what you need, but not taking too much. And there's still the sustainability that things will keep moving forward. So there's always enough. There's always enough in nature. There's abundance everywhere. And everyone can thrive. We just have to start looking to those principles and values and models in nature already. So those are other ways that you can, so for example, for every 4 coaching clients that you get VIP, you could possibly give 1 pro bono. Or
Yes,
put your coaching
I love
package
that.
into an online course and give that for free.
Yeah.
So there are lots of ways to thrive while solving broke people's problems. Because,
But that is such a really beautiful thing, isn't it? And I think it's so, and this might sound very sexist, but it's something that I have felt when I've dealt with men versus dealing with women. And women are always looking, quite often, always, I'm using very broad generalizations.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
But, there's so many women that I've spoken to in business who are always looking for a way to give back, always looking for, somehow to give back to the community, to contribute to the community, to do something. Like, it's not just enough that they gain, that they have this feeling that they've got to put that nurturing into something bigger than themselves. Compared to having worked with male coaches who are like, charge more, do this, no, you've got to make a profit, don't give any money away, like everything's got to be paid for, and it's this very much like take all and give nothing.
Yes. And also it really calls into question this idea of what do you actually want and need. What do you want versus what you need? And your wants can be anything, and that's totally fine. But we have this thing around, and we do it to ourselves as women. This is where we don't do very well, because if you don't want a multiple 6-figure business, you've got a money block. Because you don't want this thing, you've got an upper limit level that you've got to work through. It's like, why are we doing this to women? Why are we doing this? Like, you don't have a block. Like, stop telling women to charge their worth. It's got nothing to do with their worth. Charge the value of your work. Like, why? Like this, we put, like, women's worth are tied into way too many things already. It doesn't need to be tied into our work as well. And I think by giving back, as long as you're building a sustainable regenerative business model, i.e. you're not going to hit burnout, like your model is sustainable. I take in 4 VIP clients and that fills my cup, that fills everything I need to do financially. Now I have energy and time and all of these things to give back. So why wouldn't you? Because then another woman can build the same model and help even more people. We are all deserving to thrive.
And that's a really important point, Sarah, because really we hear it all the time that if you're not charging $2,000, $5,000 for your product, you have a self-worth issue.
Yeah.
And so then we're all walking around going, fuck, I've got self-worth issues. And then we all paralyzed because it's like, well, I'm not charging $5,000, and until I feel comfortable to charge $5,000, I can't have a business. Because apparently I've got massive self-worth issues.
And
we just went, hey, you know what? Just charge $200. Just start somewhere. Just get on with it. Who cares?
Yeah.
And women just started taking action, and then started charging $200, and then started charging $600, and then started charging $1,000, and then for some reason charged $2,000 a year later. They'd be so much further in.
I'm not saying that that self-worth isn't a component of being in business, right? It's like confidence and self-worth and all those things, and that gradually. But I really encourage people to separate those two things and look at them individually. It's like, I want to earn $60,000 a year for my business because that's what I earned in if it was a full-time admin job, that's what it would be. So how do I do that working backwards? Do I want to work with 20 people or do I want to work with 5 people? Okay. Or a mix of those things. Like, you can play around with it. Now, if I get my needs met, so I have a house, I have a roof over my head, I am growing my vegetables, I'm, all of the things that you require, and list them. If makeup and eyeshadow is your thing, go for it, right? Like, put that on your list. Once those things are met, then you have space to give. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we've been taught this model of like, I've got to succeed first and then I'll give a little back. And we really need to stop that. I think we really need to start building giving in from the very beginning, like as part of your business plan, of actually part of how you want to show up in the world.
And it is one of those things where we, it's like that saying, once I have this, I'll be happy. It's like, no, just be happy now.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
we can start giving now no matter how much we earn or don't earn. I mean, you could just be
Yes.
starting off in business and still be giving, a free coaching session every month.
Yes.
For an
Absolutely.
hour, and it's really not taking anything away from you. Like, if
Yeah.
that's a part of your business ethics, like, you can just
Yes.
put it in from day dot.
But it's like the bus, like every single floorboard, every centimeter, every wall, every screw, every opportunity to talk to someone about it brought like the most enormous amount of joy I've ever experienced. Like I just, it wasn't about finishing it. It wasn't about moving in. That was no doubt. It was like, I'm going to move in. I'm going to live in a bus. My next move will be onto the driveway. Like, that's what I genuinely believed. But in the process of that, there was not a moment of joyless. It was just explosive, the amount of happiness that it brought me. Every single piece, every piece of furniture, every piece of timber, every pallet I dragged home, everything that I did for that project was joyful. And so there's no waiting. There's no waiting for the the next
You're already
thing
in
or
the joy.
You're already in it, living it, and so it's expanding and expanding and expanding.
And that's so powerful in itself, like, especially, at a metaphysical level, where when you're already like vibrating and resonating in that joy,
yes.
like, is it really any surprise that you were finding sinks on the side of the roads, or bits and pieces that you need were, arriving well before they were needed?
Random stuff. Like, I remember coming home from work one day and a business card was in my letterbox. Someone had seen my bus, saw the crack in the window, and they put a card for a bus auto glazer in my, I never knew who it was. Like, I never knew who it was. And but it's just, this beautiful, like, arriving of stuff,
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what impact it's had on other people to hear about my bus. And I love it when it's obvious and it's like immediate, and someone will say, oh my God, I needed to hear you today. Or, like, those exchanges are beautiful, but I know there's like 20 million of them that aren't like that, and I'll never know. But all I had to do was start, all I had to do was say I'm buying a bus.
You know what I can tell you is my partner, because he's gorgeous, but very fixed in his way of thinking, and he will not like that I've just said that, but whatever. He can't defend himself.
I love that. He can't defend himself.
I've shown him your stuff online occasionally. I'm like, look what Sarah's done. Look at the bus. And actually just him seeing the photos of your journey, like from years ago when I first started seeing you online, with you sitting in the bus with the drill, trying to figure out how to do, I think it was the floors or the windows or something.
Floors,
And that was huge for him, because suddenly it started opening him up to what could be possible, what is he not stuck into the model that he was taught to do. And bless their hearts, his dad works in mortgage broking, so he was really ingrained in that.
Yes. And that wasn't a bad thing a generation or two ago, because they were affordable, because you could have one partner going out to work and pay the mortgage, and the other person could stay at home and look after children. Like, that model worked then, but it doesn't.
And the wages actually covered that.
Yeah, we're basing our entire worldview on something that no longer fits. We didn't have the technology that we have now. Like, the entry level to get into a business or do something that you're passionate about. Like, there are 5-year-old children on YouTube earning $100,000 a year from opening fucking toys on a YouTube channel. Now, if that's possible, anything. What are you doing? What are you passionate about? Go, just start talking about it. Literally just start talking about it and see what happens. For me, I got frustrated because I couldn't piece it together, and I couldn't find a way to, it's like, why is my passion not turning into something? But I had to be patient, and I had to just sit and allow the pieces of it to evolve and to, like, come to me. And I had to figure out my message. Like, I really had to figure that out. And that took a couple of years, but I was there all day, every day, online, just talking about stuff, posting pictures, hopefully inspiring others to take action.
And that is so true, isn't it? there's that timing where sometimes we're so harsh on ourselves because we want so much for ourselves, because we love ourselves so much, but
Yeah.
yet we're so critical of ourselves, and we're like, well, this isn't enough for me, or I'm not doing enough, or maybe it's because
Well, I mean,
I'm
and that's
not
down to
enough.
mainstream
And
marketing as well. I mean, we hear it all the time: 6 weeks to 6 figures, and like 3 months to blah blah blah. It's like far out. It takes time. It takes time. And it's okay that it takes time. But we have been suckered into this black hole of immediacy and entitlement
instant
and
gratification.
instant gratification. Yeah, and it's like things are just slower, and that's why people are getting overwhelmed. It's like, you don't need to be on 5 platforms. You need to be on one that you love being on. Like, that's it. You don't need to do all of this stuff. You need to focus on who you serve, what you actually want to do, and what lights you up.
Yeah. So when you refer to helping women to unhook from mainstream marketing, what do you classify or consider as mainstream marketing?
Any should, have to, must, need, have to have a website, have to have branding, have to do this, have to be this, have to have this many followers, have to, all of that, all of the noise of shoulds and have tos. Anything where you are not enough already, anything where it is not simply about, I have this thing and I need an audience and let's talk. I call it, if your business was a minimalist, what would you do? That's what I ask myself all the time. If my business was a minimalist, what would I do?
I love this so much because Verity and I started in online business literally at the same time. And I don't know if you remember this, Verity, but I remember having this message drilled into me that we didn't need a website, but we had to have a Facebook page. And that was it. And mind you, this is about 3, probably
challenge
close to 4 years ago. Yeah, but you know, I to this day I still don't have a website. I've dabbled with it, but I've never maintained them, and I just let them lapse because I can't be bothered. But those things about, you know, you've got to be on X amount of platforms. You now, like, if I'm sure that some of those programs have been updated to say things like, not only do you just need a Facebook page now, you also need Instagram and LinkedIn, and you need all of these other things.
That drives home your lack, urgency, scarcity, any of that is mainstream marketing. Anything where you need somebody else to fix a problem that you have, like anything like that is mainstream marketing. Any pushy thing, any I mean, really, there are even some feminine business models that I'm like, still not very feminist, you know, like we've spoken before about charging people extra in payment plans and our views on that. And, you know, it's really, really about stripping it back for me. So unhooking from mainstream marketing means going into self, really, and knowing that your intuition is right. Like the amount of clients I have that say, you know, I really thought that all along and I just didn't do it. Or I really, that's what I wanted to do, but I sort of felt like I should do this because they're the expert. It's like, they're not the expert on you. They're not the expert. No one is saying or advising people to, what do you want? So now I've started collecting different examples of businesses and people who run their business in all of the ways that clients have come to me and said, oh, no, but you need a Facebook. Oh, do you? Do you need that? Do you? Here are 5 people who do it completely differently. Or here, like, you don't need social media. You don't need like, your purpose doesn't need a business card. It just doesn't. Like, you don't need a logo. You don't need anything. What you need is to know that you have a big message, that you have an offer and a way for someone to pay you. That's it. Like, going into debt to build a website for a message you don't even know that converts yet is nuts.
Correct.
It's just crazy.
And that's what we get told to do. We get told that you need a website, you need business cards, you need a logo, you need your branding.
You need to be a size 2 to be happy.
Start.
You need to be skinny to be beautiful. You need to be like, enough. Women have enough. And so it's really about asking people to ask themselves, what do they actually want? And then build out their message and their branding and their business based on those things. Like, I only want to work these amount of hours. I want to feel this way. I want to talk about this. I don't want to be on that platform. I want to be on this platform. Not buying into all of the have-tos. Because what happens is you think automation or outsourcing is the answer, when really the answer is streamlining. Like, don't like Pinterest? Don't outsource it. Just don't be there unless you absolutely have to. But that's something that you need to like get conscious around and know. It's like, I don't have a Facebook page. I'm refusing to have a Facebook page for ethical reasons, and I'm finding other platforms to move to. And even that I'm questioning, like, do I want to be building a community in that way, or do I just want to focus on my list?
Wow.
No one's asking these questions. Like,
Yeah.
you can succeed any way you choose to. You just have to choose.
And I think that's the thing. There's so many ways that people are telling us to do so many things. Like you said, we're lost because we don't know which way to go. We don't know which one to choose. Should we be on Instagram? Should we be on Facebook? And like you said, we're looking outside of ourselves for the answers. And then someone's like, no, you've got to have webinars. Oh, no, you've got to have this. And then we're like, fuck, this is confusing. Like,
it really
which
is.
one should I do? I can't do all of this. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time. I'm just not made for business. And then all of a sudden we're like on this massive downward spiral, thinking that we have no place as an entrepreneur or a business woman.
And that's just not true. It's like, I know somebody who has no social media, none whatsoever, and all they do is write one newsletter a week to their list, and they've done that for 6 years, and they launch their courses I think 2 or 3 times a year, and that's how they make $450,000 a year. They've got no VAs, no moving parts, nothing. They've just committed to that one platform for the last 6 to 12 years.
That's incredible. Before that.
And look, like I say, if 6 figures isn't your thing, that's cool too. But what my point is, take time off over Christmas and New Year if this is you, and think about how you actually want to make your business a success, and do only that.
You know what I love so much about this, Sarah, is like prior to today, like I think the last couple of days especially, I have had so many ads come up on my social media, all of them from business coaches that I've never interacted with before. And they're all about how, there was one that was absolutely ridiculous. That was like how I added 11 people to my team in like 24 hours. And it was ridiculous. Literally, all I remember, it was like adding 11 people to your team. And I'm like, I don't want that level of work. Bugger off.
I only like 11 people. I don't want.
Yeah, and I just went, oh my God, there's going to be so many people who look at that and get completely overwhelmed and think that that's what having a successful business is having a huge team.
100%. Now, so for me, right, I live off grid. In about a year's time, we'll have started growing our own food. We're debt-free, mortgage-free. We don't have bills. Everything's solar. So 60K for me is like $1 million, right? It means that I take home almost all of that because there's, a small amount of tax. And our outgoings are almost nothing. So for the amount of work I have to do to get that money and take home, I don't know, 45,000, whatever it is, versus all of the moving parts to get in 100 or 200,000 and lose 40% of it in tax, plus then possibly need a VA, plus neither is right or wrong. I just know what's the right one for me. And that's what I encourage my clients to do. It's like, why are you struggling with this thing that you don't actually like or want when you could put your energy here? Like, it's about the maximum amount of yield for the minimum amount of effort. That's really what it is. Like, we bang on in various different forms about the 80-20 rule, but no one's really understanding what that means. Like, that means go with your gut and listen to yourself because you're right. And so where you're hanging out and you love, that's where you should be, and make it work in that space. Because it will naturally, because you're having fun.
It's so fascinating, isn't it? Because I've had so many male business coaches do talks, and even, and Ashley and I both studied the same coaching institute as well. Mm-hmm. And they always have that.
Can I just stop you there? We're just going to say it's not actually the coaching institute.
Okay.
Just to put that out there so we don't get sued.
No. So we've
the same one.
Yeah. At the same one.
We went to the same school.
And it was really fascinating because it's funny you said that, actually, because I actually have no memory. Like, I can't even remember what the name of the place is called. We were always kind of getting told, like, find a mentor and then do exactly what they did. Like, don't question it, just follow the rules and you'll
Yeah.
succeed. And so you kind of come out going, right, I've got to follow someone else's rules.
Yes.
I've got to do what they
And look,
do. Don't
process,
question it.
yes.
Don't, you know, whether it resonates with you or not, don't question it. Don't, you know, waver. Just do exactly what they did.
Yes.
And you're just like, oh, okay, that's what I've got to do.
Because for some people, the outcome is the thing. For others, and people like myself and my clients, where it's, you know, we talk about gentle marketing, we talk about invitational style. It's much more about how you get to your outcome. It's just as important as the outcome itself. And there's a lot more people, especially women, in that space. Process, rhythm, structure, they are sexy, seductive things, and they have their place. Now, essentially, you're talking about a model that's basically a numbers game. If you have 2,000 people on your list, you'll get this percentage. But that's true for them. But I would much rather have a smaller list and a higher engagement. So I get between 40 and 50-ish% open rates and about a 1% response rate to my newsletter, weekly newsletter, versus someone who's telling me I need 2,000 people on it to even get a conversion of like 1%. It's not true. I decide what's true for me and what feels right. You know, you've got to write 3 times a week in launch mode. You've got to do, nope, I don't. My promise, my public promise has always been I will never write to you more than once a week. It's usually fortnightly-ish because I'm not a fast processor of information, and what I write is intentional. It's about your audience and about what works for you. You know, I don't book in clients for the week before my period because I'm tired, right? But you need to build that into your structure. It's choosing. We are so fixated on a solution because we don't think we're enough ourselves, or we don't think we have it ourselves, instead of being encouraged to trust yourself, like genuinely. Everything's new in business. I get it. And getting distracted with like slides for your webinar and your logo and all that stuff is like easy to get distracted with, but it doesn't refine your message. What refines your message is speaking anywhere you can, on your Facebook groups, on your page if you have one, wherever you want to do it, wherever feels good to you, but go with what feels good. Like, that's at the core. Like, if you're a success because you're earning 6 figures but you're exhausted now, like, is that really success?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can earn that money in a much easier way.
And there's things, isn't it? Like, there are people who earn lots and lots of money, but at the same time are in lots and lots of debt. There are people who earn lots and lots of money, but are majorly unhappy. I always remember having worked for this millionaire back when I was, I think, 18, 19. And I went into work one day and he said to me, "How are you so happy?" He said, "You have no money." He was so brutally honest. He's like, "You have no money." He's like, "Your boyfriend's, you know, paralyzed in hospital because he just had a horrific motorbike accident and was quadriplegic. This one step worse than Christopher Reeve. So he's dependent on life support. Had a trachea. Couldn't talk without a trachea in. And he was like, "Your life's a mess because you're so poor." And he said, "How are you so much happier than me?" He said, "I'm a millionaire. I've got more money. I've got more business success." He goes, "I can travel around the world. I've just come off this amazing cruise and I'm miserable." And he was just like, he just stopped me in the middle of the foyer. And he was literally like, "I want the answer."
Sure, mate.
Are you happier than me?
Yeah, and look, and let me be clear, this isn't about the dollar amount, right? Like, I have a big goal now that's basically to own a town that's off-grid, completely self-sustaining, and using permaculture principles so that everyone has food and everyone, like, that's my big goal. I've been looking to, like, I saw a town for sale for $70,000 and I was like, right, that's my new big goal. Once I've got my place established here and I've learned everything I need to, I'm going to scale it. And so now it's not like I'm saying, "Oh, I don't want 6 figures," or "I don't want this," or "I don't want that," or "That's bad." It has to have somewhere to go to. It still has to have purpose. It doesn't matter if you've got $10 in your bank account or $10,000 in your bank account. If you don't have purpose for it, or a purpose for your life, you're going to feel shit. Like, it wasn't that I was poor that I was feeling shit. I was feeling crap because I didn't have purpose. It was wrapped into it all. But I could have been earning good money, and still I was, when I had a job and I hated my job, I still didn't feel good, even though I was paying my rent, because I didn't have purpose. The money is an arbitrary, weird thing that we focus on, that's like, 5-figure months and 6-figure businesses, and it's great to have those goals, but they shouldn't be linked to our worth and our identity.
Yeah.
It's just a metric to kind of reach for.
I just love this so much.
Me
I
too.
do. Because one thing I hear all the time with the work that I do with people with podcasting is they freak out because they don't have 10,000 downloads in the first month that they've launched their show. And or 3 months or something like that. And it's exactly the same thing. The metrics are just a guide. It's just there to give you a little bit of information.
Yeah.
It's what you make that information mean.
Yes, exactly. Like I had a client recently, and there was a sort of metaphor. I was just planted tomatoes, and there's lots of metaphors when it comes to my bus or growing food. But we're talking about patience in this way. And it's like, beating yourself up because you haven't reached a goal yet, or, you haven't really defined success. So you're like, oh, I haven't succeeded yet. It's like, I've just planted seeds. If I go out and scream at them through the soil that I've planted them in to grow, and that they're just so shit because they're not there yet. Like, do you think that's going to work? Or do I water them every day, and do I nurture the soil, and do I talk to them in a nice way, and do I really hope that they grow really healthily, and and do I have patience? Yes. And 4 or 5 days later, guess what? Like little shoots come up. It's patience. It's really like we've been suckered into this idea that these things are successful. So 3 months, 6 weeks, this amount of money, this dress size, like all of these things that we're weighing ourselves up against. And it's just rubbish if none of them actually came from who you really are.
And I think that's the important part as well with what you were saying about stripping things back to that minimalist, I guess, way of thinking, even about business, is that we get so overwhelmed with all the things we've got to do. We don't have the time in our heads or the energy in our heads to be patient with one thing, because we're trying to hold or jump 20
all the
balls
balls
in the air. And we don't have patience to focus on one of them.
I mean, most of the people I work with are spinning the plates, juggling the balls, like running across the stage, trying to do that all at once. And I'm just like, oh, what would happen if you just let them drop? And like, that's the first question. I'm just like, oh, what would happen? That's quite exciting to think about. And then like, which one do you want to start spinning with? Because let's just spin one, it's really... Once you quiet the noise of all of that should, have to, like, expect all of that, like genuinely take and I took a physical step back. I came off of the internet for 3 months. I was occasionally in groups that I had built really good relationships with people in. I actively took time out to go and discover what I wanted to do, what I actually want to coach, what was my real message. I was going to be away from my bus for almost a year, and that was like a really hard thing for me. I was also completely without a job or any of my own financial income at the time, other than anything that I built for myself, because we moved to the US. And I was just like, oh my God, everything shifted. And I actively needed to take time out to just allow that space to sort of, and then I realized, okay, I want this. And I tried that before and that didn't fit very well. So I'll do this version of it. And I just carefully, anything that comes into my world is intentional. It's very carefully pondered, thoughtful, and it's taken time. Like, it's taken me 4 years in August to get from like that darkest moment at the dining table to where I am now. 4 years. It's not a long time. It just sounds like a long time. But it's not. I'll never ever be able to promise you 6 figures in 6 weeks, but I will be able to promise you that every step of the way you'll be doing something intentionally that actually feels good for you. That will reap rewards.
That is so important, isn't it? And I think as well, there's not a lot of
message.
coaches. It is, but I don't think there's a lot of coaches as well that teach you or coach you to look inwards for the answers.
No.
And I think that's a really powerful way to operate, and for someone to be held. So they're learning to trust themselves, to trust their instincts, and to go within for the answers.
Because I was terrified to do that. I was opposite of everything. My feedback loop was, oh, that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good. And so I didn't know why. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the context. And so I went and I sought out people who who were able to language things for me that I was like, oh my God, yes, that's it. Oh my God. And I followed them. And then I found another person. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, so I found loads of different people in different types of businesses with different bodies of work who are all shining a light on a specific way of doing something that's different to the norm. And I feel like it's my part, my duty, my role to do it for what I think is important. And, you know, with heightening rise of overwhelm and exhaustion and all of the things and self-doubt and all of that stuff, it's like, it's even more of a job to say, okay, how do you want it to be? And like, I literally encourage people to just unhook, unfollow, unsubscribe, undo any old ideas that you have. And even if you don't have the next piece yet, just suspend all belief, all the stuff that you currently think is true. Just suspend it, even for a day. Just say, for 24 hours, I'm going to be okay with not knowing, and just see what arrives in your world.
Wow, that can be terrifying to do. But it's also one of those things that can be extremely exciting.
Yeah. Like, what if you didn't have a Facebook page? Like, I was very calculated. I was like, I've spent 3 years on my Facebook page. I've pivoted slightly.
Facebook pages.
But I was like, I've been doing this thing. It's not that I've outgrown anything, but I've expanded. And Mrs. P is not just about the bus anymore. It's about purpose. It's about intentional living. And so it grew. And some of the audience weren't growing with me. They were like, no, we came here for a bus conversion. Totes cool. That's fine. That's what I said it was. And so when I was trying to make a living by coaching or helping people build tiny or whatever, I did a whole bunch of different things. Nothing was working. And so I just had to put it down and say, okay. So I left my page with like 2,000 people on it and said, this is where I'm going. This is my focus. I'd love you to join me. And I started again. And I was like, so I never ever once got paid from my page, but I did get paid in Facebook groups. I'm like, okay. And then, you know, the ethical decisions and the moral compass and everything else kind of kicked in. And I was like, yeah, I'm not cool with what Facebook's doing. So I'm going to stick into communities that I know, because, you know, at the moment it's early adopters who are leaving. It's not really mainstream yet. And I love Facebook groups, and that's where I get my, you know, word of mouth and also clients. And so I focused on there instead. And all of the stress of like, how to build this into something and make it happen stopped, and things just started flowing to me. But it was a very easy calculated, it's like, I've spent 3 years doing this every day, nothing's come of it. Like, what if I just put it down? And I put it down for a whole month before I ever said I was leaving, and before I ever did like my 3 month kind of back away. And so nothing changed, no one died. Like, nothing collapsed, and it was like, okay, cool. The world didn't end, my business didn't break. I still like, and now I'm even more intentional. Like, I took social media completely off my phone about 5 months ago, and I've had more clients. I've started my newsletter. I've got, like, you know, everything's grown because I'm much more intentional about how I use these tools.
That's amazing.
I love that. I remember getting off my Instagram profile for ages and not going on it, probably for a good 6 months. And when I jumped back on it, the people, like, I somehow gained more followers. And I also found that was really interesting. I'm like, but I've not done it. I've ignored it for 6 months. How's it still growing?
I did that with one of my podcasts.
I left, you know, Life Off Grid with 2,000 people. And it was terrifying because I went and I started building a list that's now 200 strong. But I have 50% engagement with those 200 people every week, every single week, at least. And at least 1 to 2% of those respond to my email, and we converse throughout the week. Now, that's where I want to put my effort. There. Like, 2,000 people looks good on a numbers board, but if they're not engaging with you and they're not actually interested in what you have to offer, and you know what I mean? Like, it's all of that energy given out, when really what I wanted was to build real relationships with people.
I love that.
So forget the numbers.
Okay.
It's irrelevant.
Just forget them. Just throw them out the window.
Just do it. But so if, you know, like, it's a great time of year to be doing this as well, right? Like, it's really just a great time of year to take stock and say, okay, what do I actually like doing? What drained me? What gave me energy? How do I do it? there's no, you've got to post 2 times a day or you'll die. Nothing. Like, if you want to post 3 times a week, post 3 times a week, but do it consistently over a year, and nothing will be different. I'm telling you. It's not about how many times at what time of day and like how many numbers. It's about you and your message. And if you're really passionate about what you're talking about, that's the energy that those things go out into the world with. That's what people are attracted to.
Yeah.
Really, truly, like, fuck, or you're just fighting an algorithm forever and like bullying your way in to get space and reach. Like, who wants to live like that?
And it's so much energy.
It's so much energy. It's exhausting. It is, and you're doing that for multiple platforms, multiple pieces of your business. Like, nothing's taking into consideration that it's actually a whole system with you in the middle of it. Your life, your family, your unit, your sleep, your food, like all of those things they're not being nourished if you're frantically fragmented in all these different areas. So I would say choose one message, one offer, one platform for next year, or at least the first quarter, and just play with it.
That was so funny that you just said that, because I was just thinking in my head to ask you, so what advice would you give our audience to kind of shut down the noise?
If you are brave enough, if you are brave enough to genuinely unhook for the holidays, take time off of social media, just stop, take time out of your business, and and from there you can then start planning that better for next year. Like, if that's something you genuinely can't do this year, it's something that you should consider planning for next year, to be like, okay, we're slowing down as we hit November. But it is literally one message, one offer, one platform. That would be my advice.
I love it. Oh,
and choose
Sarah,
the one that lights you up.
I could keep talking to you for years and years and years.
Oh, I feel the same. And we haven't even touched on anything we were going to.
This is part one. Part one.
Oh,
apparently
God.
My dog agrees. He's barking in the background too, going, yes, more.
I love it. Sarah, having said all of the awesome things that you have, if people do want to connect with you and they want to find out more about Mrs. P and all of the good things that you're getting up to, where do they stalk you?
Well, they can come to my website, sarahtaylor.net. And I still have my Life Off Grid page. It's not active, but you can certainly go there, Facebook at Life Off Grid, and you can go and see the whole last sort of 3 years of my journey, basically. I
would recommend signing up for Sarah's list, because like her newsletter, because I'm subscribed to it and I love it. It's just like a weekly-ish dose of it feels like my soul gets a bit of a bath, like it like scrubs off all the gunk that I've accrued in the last little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's a nice I really wanted to have somewhere where I could learn and then integrate and get it out into the world. And it's basically just about living and building a business with intention. That's my aim for the newsletter.
Well, I will be signing up to the newsletter as soon as we get off this podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing.
It's been an absolute joy, and Ashley's known quite a bit about Sarah, and this is really the first time I've actually sat down with you. So I've absolutely just loved listening to all the juicy wisdom and your beautiful perspective on things. It's so challenging, and it really does challenge me even further to sort of break down, even more of those good rules, especially in business that we've force fed. So
thank you. That is the best compliment you could have ever given me. Thank you so much. I really like to challenge people.
Hadn't noticed.
Thank you so much.
Hey, if you want to continue this conversation, head over to our Facebook page and be part of the revolution. You can find us at Good Girls Don't Podcast on Facebook. Please note, we cannot create change alone. Your support, likes, comments, shares, and iTunes reviews help us to give a voice to the insanely inspirational women and the controversial issues that we discuss.
If you'd like to be a part of our podcast, or if you have an issue that you have a burning desire for us to bring into the light, please contact us. With Fierceness, Ashley
and Verity.
Get ready for the rain.